This is The Tea Mind with me, Erica Moore. It's a space to slow down, step out of the noise, and see things a little more clearly. Some episodes are conversations around the moment that something clicked and what changed afterwards. Others are short clarity sessions, a few minutes where we sip tea together so we can come back to ourselves and think clearly in the middle of a full day. Because when the usual pace stops working and everything starts to feel a little bit unclear, the answer is rarely more information. It's usually a little more attention. A chance to pause and to see what's been overlooked, and to create enough space for clarity to find you. So welcome back to this week's Tea Mind podcast, and my guest today is Eleanor Cunningham. And many people might know Eleanor as the founder of Edinburgh Larder, a business that she spent years building around food, hospitality, and really that sense of bringing people together. And in fact, Eleanor was one of Etiquette's first wholesale tea customers way back in 2009, and her business is still going strong with 3 cafes in Edinburgh. But that is not the whole part of her story. As if that's not enough, Eleanor now lives in Dunbar, so we have reconnected as we're both in the same town. And she's now an abstract artist. She creates paintings that explore belonging, regeneration, and our connection to the natural world. And I think her transition from hospitality into art and really the merging of the two is really intriguing, and there's a lot to learn from her approach to life and work. And long before she started running cafes, Eleanor trained in textile design. So her abstract landscapes are really inspired by the landscape that's all around us, whether that's exploring memory, belonging, and the traces that people leave behind. So in this conversation, we're going to explore what happens when the identity that you've become known for is no longer your whole story. And we'll get into what landscape, creativity, observations means, and also the difference between building something in this world and actually making sense of it. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Eleanor. How are you today?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm good today. I've woken up in a bit of a funk this morning. So yeah, I've got my tea with me to cheer me up a bit. But yeah, I think I might be coming down with a cold. It's like towards the end of the term and getting towards summer, and everyone's kind of got a lot on their plate. But yeah, I'm good. I've done a bit of yoga and yeah, got some nice tea with me. So I'm good and happy to be here.
Excellent. Yes, tea is a cure-all for everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just sort of running on that treadmill. I think everyone's just trying to get to their summer holidays, but it's annoying how we get to the break, a natural pause in our life like that, and then everything just hits us, and it's often a warning sign when we get ill and whatnot.
It is definitely, yeah. But it's nice that the weather's getting a bit warmer, and it's looking nice outside today, so that's good.
Great. So I'm really interested to dig into more of your story. So perhaps you can take us back to, I remember meeting you back in, I think it was 2009, when you came into the Etiquette tea room and we were tasting tea and you were about to open your cafe. Yeah, what was life like then for you?
That was quite a crazy time. I remember meeting you at the Foodies Festival, and
Yes.
just I think that's the first time that we met, and you had this amazing tea stand, and I was thinking about setting up the cafe at that point. I think I was about to sign the lease, and it was all kind of very new, and I was so excited to kind of find new producers and suppliers, and seeing you there just seemed like it was kind of meant to be. Yeah, and having a really lovely chat about tea and trying lots of different teas was amazing. So yeah, I can't believe that that's nearly 17 years ago. It's a long time ago. Um, so yeah, at that time, I'd actually just finished working in finance. I'd worked in finance for about 7 years. I have had a really kind of weird, winding career path. As you said, I started out in textiles. So I went and worked in the London fashion industry for a little bit after I graduated. And that was really one of the only places you could get a job at that time. So I kind of felt like I needed to make the move down south. But as you've kind of hinted at in the introduction, what really inspires me is the natural world and the natural landscape. And I just didn't feel like I got enough of that in London. So I only lasted about 7 months down there and felt like I needed to run back up to Scotland to get some inspiration. And I trained in graphic design, um, but then felt also that that didn't really work for me. I didn't want to spend 24/7 on a computer. I loved the course, but it just didn't feel like the right thing. So I thought I'm just going to do some temping in a bank while I figure out what I'm doing. And I ended up being there for 7 years, and it was an amazing experience. I think I always knew that I wanted to set up a business of some kind. So I moved through all sorts of areas. I started in office management, and I moved through project management, trained as a project manager, and then went on to risk and strategy, and finished up in communications, internal comms. So it was a brilliant sort of foundation for running a business. But at that time, it was the second time that the business was about to be taken over, and it was about to become Lloyd's. And I was asked to move down to Bristol, and I just didn't want to do that. And I thought now is the time to get out and set up my own business. And I think at that point, I didn't even really know what that would be. I've spent a long time talking about food and making food with my family, and it's just always been something that is really close to all of our hearts. So it seemed like the kind of best thing for me to do. So when I met you, I'd kind of just travelled around a couple of different areas in Scotland trying to work out if I could be supplied directly by farmers and suppliers rather than kind of going through wholesalers, and really kind of creating a business to talk about Scottish produce and what that means.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you've had this pull to sort of set up a business, but it also seems connected to the natural world. That we're really passionate about getting local Scottish producers and engaging with them directly. I wonder where that pull and that deep desire comes from.
I don't really know. I think I kind of have always been really fascinated by food. My mum and dad have always grown a lot of food in our garden, and they travelled a lot when they were young. My dad travelled a lot in his job, and we all kind of went to different locations around the world. I lived in America when I was younger for a bit, and I think it just made me fascinated by food and where it comes from. But I think walking up and down the centre of Edinburgh, particularly up and down the Royal Mile, I realised how little sort of conversation at that time there was going on about what Scottish food really was, and how the ingredients could be used in a more kind of modern way than people knew about. I think everyone instinctively thinks of haggis and smoked salmon and whiskey, but I really wanted to kind of use the ingredients in a bit of a different way and an affordable way as well. I was really interested in making that food affordable to most people. Um, so a kind of cafe concept just seemed like the right thing to do. And I think I've always felt really inspired by the natural world as well. It's always been the thing that's brought me back to myself and kind of made me feel calm. So thinking about the producers that we use being kind of custodians of the local landscape was quite an important thing for me to think about as well.
So tell me about that journey then, setting up your business and launching just off the Royal Mile. It's a really busy, I'd imagine, are really expensive for leases and rates, and yeah, you must have some stories to tell.
Yeah, yeah, many probably for an hour. It was a funny thing. I really did, after being at the kind of farmers market and things, I really did want to be there, but I couldn't find a unit initially that I thought was right. But at that time, my husband was training to be a high school teacher, and he was doing his training course with somebody that worked at a cafe called Spoon, which is the unit that I took over. And she was saying it's not on the market yet, but they're actually thinking about selling it. And I went in to look at it, and I thought I think it might be too small for what I was thinking about. But the more that time went on, the more I thought actually it's in the perfect place. Let's just go for it. Unfortunately, we rent off the council, Edinburgh Council, which has been amazing actually. I've heard kind of a lot of stories about private landlords, and I knew with the council it would take a long time to sign off the lease, which it did. but they are generally fairly reasonable when it comes to sort of rental rates in the city. So, but yeah, I think when you're setting up any new business, it's a shock the amount, that you get charged for everything, including things like waste removal and things that you don't particularly have to think about when you're just paying council tax. Everything is sort of separated out as a business, and you'll know yourself. There's a lot to think about. So yeah, it was quite overwhelming, and I think the first couple of years are just a bit of a whirlwind. But at that point in time, we were really quiet as well. There wasn't a lot happening on Blackfriars Street, and the Royal Mile was quite a sea of people just kind of walking down through the festival and not really thinking about coming off the Royal Mile. We had to be quite creative about going up and handing out bits of brownies and really enticing people to come down to the cafe. So that took a lot of work, a lot of marketing, and I think gradually people knew where we were and they would start to come back every year on their holidays, and it became like quite a sort of community of people from all over the world, which is lovely, and it still is.
Yeah, it's amazing what you've created there. And yeah, it must be really heartwarming to sort of see people come back year after year and start to make connections and become friends with them.
It is. It's lovely. It's like a kind of really huge extended family. I think that's always what I wanted from the start, was it to feel like a kind of home from home. And all that, we've had people that have worked with us for 10 years now, and it is like a big family. They get kind of cards from people all over the world saying that they've had a lovely time, and a lovely experience in the cafe, and asking about recipes. And it's just, yeah, it has that kind of vibe about it. It's a lovely place for even me to go into and just chat with the team. It's, yeah, always feels very welcoming.
Yeah, and those little mementos and little kind words from customers mean so much when it's such a hard job and there's so much work and dedication goes into it. So yeah, those little things do mean an awful lot, more than people know, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So there must have been, obviously, running a business like that in the city centre, lots of ups and downs and challenges. How did you manage yourself during all those sort of trials and tribulations when things are maybe going wrong or there's unexpected things you don't know what's going to hit you next?
Yeah, I think I was a bit, just felt like I was on a roller coaster at that point the whole time. I think I kind of thrived a little bit on it because I was obviously quite a bit younger than I am now. And it was exciting to start with. But then I think there's a kind of perception from people and society that you'll expand. And that kind of came from everywhere. People just expected that once we'd been established, we would set up another unit. And I did that. I set up a restaurant in the West End right as I was about to give birth, thinking that I wouldn't do it after I had a kid, so I might as well do it before. Like to do it really was. I do regret doing that now. But I just kind of felt like that's what I wanted to do at the time. And everyone kind of says once you set up a cafe, you should set up a restaurant. So I did. I tried it, and it took over my life completely when I just had a baby. And then I also went on a kind of leadership course for people in the food industry, and then decided to take over a cafe on a farm as well, so that it would be linked really closely with what we were kind of cooking in the kitchen. We would just go outside and pick every day. And I did that for a year as well. And I think it was amazing being in that landscape and, having everything be so accessible. But it also just made me think all that I was doing at that point was managing people and equipment breaking down. I had a team of over 60 people, and it was just everything was a problem every day. There was just something else to firefight. Um, so I think that was the point where I kind of realized that I needed to step away from the farm. We'd only signed a lease for a year. And so I let that go. And then pretty soon after that, I sold the restaurant and decided to get back to the kind of core of the business, which was the cafe on Blackfriars Street. And I think things became a lot clearer at that point in time. We got back to what we were really all about and kind of focusing on the suppliers and the produce and the team. And that definitely was when it started to thrive again.
Yeah. It's really interesting that there is definitely a pull to expand and do more, 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 get investment, open more places. Why do you think we feel such pressure to do that?
It's an interesting question. I think it's probably capitalism a little bit, and also the kind of perception of society that the more you do, the better you are. Um, yeah, and I think that's just, I think what from what I know now, I think nothing could be further from the truth, really. I think when I was doing the most was when I had least kind of attachment to what was really important for me in life. Um, so yeah, I think now that I've kind of scaled back and I'm doing something completely different, I really feel a lot more like myself again.
Yeah. And do you think that's given you more sort of power to trust yourself and your own instincts
Yeah,
nowadays?
definitely. Yeah, and trust the team and allow them to thrive as well. And I'm very lucky to have found a team of really incredible people. They make my life a lot easier. And I think I'd always imagined setting up my business so that I could go and become an artist again. But I never really knew when that would happen. And I think because of expanding, it took a lot longer than it should have done, really. So yeah, I feel lucky to be at that stage now.
I think it's more than luck when you manage to sort of get a good team around you. What do you think has made that possible, that you've created such a culture that has kept people with you for so long and allowed you to eventually take more of a step back from it so you can return to your art?
I think it's mainly about treating people fairly and responsibly and enabling them to have the skills that they need to grow, offering them opportunities, giving them, decent pay and good tips, and looking after them. Like we go out quite regularly as a team. We always go for a sort of Christmas night out in January, and we do like a summer kind of thing to celebrate the festival. So yeah, I think it's there's a lot to be said for really looking after people and making them feel like you care about them. And there's been some incredibly difficult times over the years where, I haven't been able to do things for them that I would have liked to. But I think it's kind of about having those open and honest conversations and being really committed to people, and allowing them free reign to kind of do things their own way. And sometimes they won't be the same way that you do them. But I think that really empowers people. So yeah, I think all of those things really.
So now you've got the cafe on Blackfriars Street and the Little Larder, which is beside it, and another one in Morningside.
Yeah,
So three
yeah,
in Edinburgh.
yeah.
And how do you find managing the three of them alongside your what you're doing at the moment?
Um, it has its up and downs. There's generally when I get a phone call, I know it's going to be something that's quite critical, because the team are amazing at managing day to day things themselves and not contacting me unless there's something really urgent. And there is inevitably quite frequently there's something big that happens. And typically it's always at a really bad time as well. Over the Christmas holidays, our boiler broke in Morningside, and then something happened with the door, and it was, all at that kind of critical time. But yeah, they're amazing at managing things most of the time, so I can get on with painting, and doing that pretty much full time. And I go in maybe once every 2 weeks to just go and see if there's anything they need. We have a finance meeting once a month, and I get involved in marketing and things, but predominantly they manage everything themselves, which is amazing.
That's fantastic. So yeah, it sounds like your 7 years in the bank training on all these different aspects has been put to very good use.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
So you said you always had in the back of your mind that you wanted to be an artist in the future. So tell me about that moment when you'd set up your business and you had it all running, good managers in place. Was there a particular moment when you decided this is it, I'm going to make the change now?
Yeah, there was a very major moment of COVID.
Ah.
I moved to Dunbar about 6, 7 months before COVID. My daughter was about to go into primary three, and we were kind of like, this is, probably either we need to move now or maybe when she's going into secondary. So we just decided to make the move to the coast, and I grew up on the coast, so I had that real kind of pull to the sea. But then COVID happened about 6 months, 7 months after that. Um, and obviously, when it happened, we had no idea as business owners how things were going to pan out. It was just a state of panic, I think, for quite a long time, until we worked out what was going to be happening to support businesses. And I thought, how can I use this time when the business completely shut down and I had, nothing anymore really. Like I was, kept all the team on and things, but I just was really at a loss with what to do. And I thought the really like the most positive way that I could use the time was to start painting again. So I built a little garden office in our garden and started painting there. Um, and I had quite a lot of really emotional moments, I think, of thinking, why have I not done this for 20 years? Um, there was definitely some days where I just went in and cried and listened to music, and just sort of rediscovered that part of myself that I thought I'd lost. But yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing to just have the time to do that. There was a lot of horrendous things about COVID, but it was having the time to do that and just walk every day, and be inspired by the outside again. And yeah, I think that was the huge shift for me to be able to get back to doing that.
Wow. And if you're comfortable, maybe tell me more about why you didn't pursue art when you were younger.
I think it's probably what we were talking about before, and the kind of pressure of society and what people kind of think about being an artist. My parents, I think, were very worried about me becoming an artist and how, there's a huge failure rate for being an artist and being able to survive as an artist. It's incredibly difficult financially. Um, so they suggested that instead of doing fine art, I did something like textiles, which would offer me something, alternative, like a different way of avenue of getting a job. But I think as soon as I started my degree in textiles, I had wished that I was doing fine art. And I saw it through, and there's many things I'm really glad that I did now. There's many things that I love about textiles, and I think it influences hugely the way that I paint now, and kind of building up layers and using different materials. But I always knew that I wanted to go back to being an artist. And I think you kind of, after graduating, you get pulled in lots of different directions, and there's so many choices to make. I think I just got swept along with whatever opportunities kind of came my way. Um, and yeah, it really did take a huge shift for me to get back to it. I think it's really strange as humans how much we sometimes push aside the things that are the things that we really need. And that definitely was how it was. It felt really scary to kind of go back to painting again and to do that. And I think that's why I probably didn't allow myself to do that for a very long time. And it took me having all the hours in the day to be able to really make that happen.
And would you have any advice to perhaps some young people listening to this, knowing that they actually have a real passion in the back of their mind somewhere, but going the sensible route like so many of us do, just to be successful, get money, whatever? What advice would you give those people?
I think it's amazing now that you can have a kind of portfolio career, and that's a really normal way of doing things. So I think that's probably what I would recommend is, try a few things, to not commit to anything wholeheartedly unless you want to. But try a few things, maybe something that gives you a little bit more financial security, and then, don't let your passion for whatever you really want to do fall by the wayside, because yeah, it's important to keep that going.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me more about that time during COVID then, when you'd created your garden painting studio and you were getting back to painting. It sounds like there was an awful lot coming up for you. What sort of things were you learning about yourself?
I think just how much creativity has always played like a huge role in my life, and I didn't know it growing up, but I've gone through the kind of process of finding out that my daughter has dyslexia and ADHD, and reading about those things. I haven't been tested, but I feel, a lot of what she's kind of gone through in school, I experienced myself at a time where people weren't really talking about any of that, or enabling you to do things in a different way. And I think painting and drawing was the one thing where I always felt like my mind was quiet. I just, I could allow my thoughts to just be set aside and not think about anything. So I think all the way through my childhood, I recognised that my brain is on the go all the time, thinking about things. And when I drew, it just stopped, or did anything creative, actually making anything. It just quietened down. So I think it made me realise how important that is in my life and how much I'd missed it. And I think just the process of making things is such an incredible thing. It gives you a lot of resilience, I think, 'cause nothing that you ever create is going to turn out the way that you think it will. And sometimes it's better and sometimes it's a lot worse. But you have to just pick yourself up again and just start again, even if it's not what you thought it was going to be. And you always learn something along the way. So I think it just kind of made me understand again how important that process is for me.
And was landscape always the key to your art, or did that sort of evolve over time?
I think it was. I've always been very fascinated by the natural world and drawing and taking photographs of nature. And I think walking in the landscape was a huge part of my practice and my process. Just noticing things and being out and taking a lot of photographs is what I do kind of when I'm walking. I'll sometimes sketch as well when I'm out in the landscape. But yeah, again, it kind of offers me a sense of peace that I don't feel in many other places. I think there's a particular thing about woodland. I think when I was in America as a young child, there was a lot of woodland all around my house. And I went to school in Boston, but we were kind of on the outskirts. It was quite a sort of frenetic pace normally in the city. And when you got out to the suburbs where we were, there was like a lake not far from our house. And it was a very outdoor lifestyle. I think that's just always stayed with me. I feel more at peace when I'm in a woodland than I do anywhere else. I walk at John Muir Country Park most days, and that's a huge influence on my practice. And I think you'd mentioned as well the kind of an impact. The other thing that I take a lot of photographs of is stone. So I'm really interested in the formulations of rocks over a long period of time. My grandparents lived on the Jurassic coast, so we went and hunted for fossils whenever we were visiting them. And I've always taken photographs of stone, whether it be out in the countryside or in the city, actually, and just the weathering marks on it really fascinates me. Whether it's from the weather or whether it's from people just walking over stone, the kind of textures and patterns that creates and the traces that people leave behind are something I've always found fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how you've almost trained yourself to sort of pay attention to all these small details. How important is that, and is there any advice you'd give for people that to get them out in nature more, but to actually start noticing all these little things and really slowing down and paying attention?
I think it took me getting a dog until I sort of allowed myself time to really do that again. So obviously I had to go out a couple of times a day to walk her when I first moved to Dunbar. But also she just loves to sniff absolutely everything. And so you'd have to stop every 5 seconds for her to do that. And it did my head in to start with. And then I kind of thought, actually maybe it's okay to just stop every few minutes and look at something. I think light often really fascinates me in the way that it plays on the ground or interacts with shadows or comes through a leaf, or the different types of green there are in the woodland, the different types of bark that there are, and the things kind of growing on bark, and lichen has always really fascinated me as well. So I think everywhere that I go, I've always taken photos ever since I was quite young, which has really annoyed my family. I can't help it. It's kind of just something that I do. It's capturing those kind of really fascinating moments that will never be repeated. But yeah, I think just knowing that it's okay to slow down and allow yourself that time to notice things, and just noticing what does catch your eye, because it'll be different for everybody, whether it's a colour or the way that light is dancing on the ground, or it'll be something different for everyone. But just allowing yourself time to do that is really important.
And do you think that's something you've always done before you sort of picked up art again, or has art almost given yourself that permission because you're then doing it for a reason, so it's okay to stop and photograph it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Yeah, I think there was a time where life was just too busy and I sort of forgot about all of that. I would still kind of take pictures of things every now and again, but yeah, it became much more important when I went back to practicing art again. Yeah.
And I'm curious how you sort of marry the two worlds when you can get lost in a landscape and being really present. And I'd imagine it's easy to lose track of time just really being in that moment, which is amazing. But then what happens when you get a phone call to say the boiler's exploded and the fire
Yeah.
brigade are here or whatever? How do you manage that and the sort of the fear of the unknown, which business owners often experience?
Really hard. It's really hard, especially when, a really important bit of artistic practice is being in a state of flow.
Yeah.
And you get a phone call like that, you're very much not, that's kind of broken immediately. I do kind of try and separate things by sometimes like switching my phone off, or, letting the team know that I'm going to do that. But yeah, I think it's taken me a long time to get to a point where I feel like I can deal with things quite quickly if something like that comes up, and then I can let it go and kind of get back to what I was doing. Sometimes it takes longer than others, depending on what the problem is. Um, but I think I've got better at not letting the stress take over and just thinking, actually, I've dealt with that now, so I'll get back to what I was doing, and then, focus on whatever else needs to be done later on in the day.
And can you tell me more about some of your exhibitions? Because I'm really interested in sort of the way that you look at landscape and the memory that places hold, and also the power of pausing, whether it's for ourselves or for the landscape, that sort of place itself. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I finished a master's last summer, and it was a 2-year master's with Falmouth University. Um, and I think that really encouraged me to kind of think about what was important to me. And I think just noticing that the human impact faces of people being in landscapes or things being in landscapes over time, it's just a really incredible thing, especially around here where we are in Dunbar. The geology around the kind of cliff faces and things here is just unbelievable, really. The amount of time that has passed since most of those things were formed is just incredible. Um, and so, yeah, it just made me think about that more deeply, I think, and how amazing it is that there are generations and generations that have gone before us. John Muir is a huge figure in Dunbar, and a very important person for kind of conservation. So I think it just made me think a lot about that side of things and how much it influences my practice. And it was the exhibition that I did for my master's over in North Berwick that really kind of grounded me in that. I think it was our tutors that were getting us to think about things slightly more conceptually, and almost as if you were walking into a room or a gallery space, and it was it was like it, what influenced your work. So it almost looked like a woodland. Um, so I chose a building that had a corner window that looked out over the John Muir Way, and it had kind of signage for John Muir out the window, so you could kind of see that already in the room. And then I got kind of pillars that I wove paper through and had drawn marks that represented kind of leaves and trees. It was all about the storm that happened, Storm Marwyn, and kind of took out a lot of the woodland at John Muir and the impact that that had on me and on the landscape, and how connected we are to the landscape in that way. I think when it kind of suffers a period of turmoil, you feel like you're doing that yourself. If you used to walk in that woodland and it's gone, all of a sudden it's like you're missing a part of yourself. But then how it regenerates over time is very similar to how we do as well. It's kind of, there were layers of sort of undergrowth that appeared over quite a long time, and the Forestry Commission left that to happen for years before the trees were kind of cleared. So it made me just think about how we and the landscape regenerate ourselves over time, and how that does, it takes a long time, and that will happen throughout your life. There's these periods where you feel peaceful and calm, and there's other periods of turmoil where unexpected things happen, or for whatever reason you don't feel like you're in the right frame of mind or the right place. And how connected that makes us to the earth, really. So yeah, it made me think about things in a really different way, just having that three-dimensional way of exhibiting work. I did have paintings as well, but I sort of collected, I've always collected a lot of objects from the coastline, and I exhibited them in kind of display cases as well. And it became a sort of interactive thing where people could pick up something that interested them and have a look at it and then put it back. So the audience became part of it as well. And we had a big conversation at the end of the exhibition about, yeah, how people related to it, and what it brought up for them. And I collaborated with a couple of other people on it as well. So there was a musician who collaborated with me and created a piece of music relating to the paintings. And then a photographer as well, who took aerial images of a lot of the landscape around Dunbar. And I think that sort of sense of connection and collaboration is really important as well.
Yeah, and I've watched the YouTube video with the three of you talking about the whole process and the journey and the impact as well. I think it's really, really powerful. And I guess a lot of people were shocked just how much they felt the impact of Storm Arwen on the natural landscape around them, which people, I guess, all over the world will be familiar with from different storms. How important do you think art in this way, in letting the sort of general public sort of really experience it in a really hands-on way like that? What does that give people? Why is it so important?
I think it definitely gives people a sense of connection and sort of shared identity and shared belonging in a place. And I think it made a lot of people just think more about their surroundings and how lucky we are to live where we do, um, but also how much the landscape kind of impacts us every day, and how those big things do have a real impact on us. But I think it was a real kind of bringing people together. It just created a real lovely sense of community and sense of identity, in a way that I don't think I've ever experienced before either. And I think art quite often has the power to just enable you and others to see things in different ways. It has the potential to come up with really creative solutions to big problems. And even if that solution is just creating a sense of community and understanding around a big thing that's happened, I think it's really important way of bringing people together.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And particularly as the world is moving more and more towards AI and the digital world, I think art and creativity has a huge role to play going forward. And personally, I think it's going to be more and more important because it's one of these things that we can't, only humans can do. It can't be replicated properly. So, yeah, do you have any advice for people sort of setting out on their career journey or maybe thinking about transitioning or trying something new or picking up a paintbrush for the first time?
I would say do it, and no matter what the result is, it's not really about what it looks like. It's about the process of creating something.
Mm.
The musician that I worked with actually started painting when we were working together, and he was like, "What I'm painting is not what I thought I would paint. It's using all these mad colors, and I don't particularly like what it looks like, but." It offered him that kind of sense of peace as well. And yeah, he found that he really loved that process as well. So I think just go out and do it, and don't worry about the result really. But also just keep practicing. My artwork has changed dramatically since I went back to painting again. And I think just the more that you keep doing it, the more success you feel like you're getting. You never feel like you're at a place that you like as a final point. It's always evolving and always moving, but it's a really incredible experience to have. So whatever that is, whatever that thing is that you feel passionate about, just keep doing it. And I think the food industry is the same. There's an amount of human love that you need to put into really wonderful food that I can't see being created by a robot. Who knows what will
Yeah.
happen? But I think it's very similar. It's a very creative human thing as well. And I think the that there's a fascination with that at the moment. There's a return to craft and things that have taken a long time for human people to do. So that's a heartwarming thing. Yeah.
Yeah, art and food. I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm one of these people that has always been told, like, I'm a rubbish drawer. I've never picked up a paintbrush at school, I don't think ever. But actually, in the past fortnight, I was in a shop and I just found myself drawn to these sort of little canvases and like they had really cute paints. So I bought myself a little set and a little 15-minute how to draw paint book thing. And I've just had the most wonderful time. I'd never show them to anyone, they're not very good. But I found it really cathartic, sort of a really good way to get out my head and a really good way to relax as well and to draw whatever's coming up. I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed the process and it's really sort of opened my eyes. And there's lots of techniques that you can learn as a beginner that actually make it sort of passable work. So
Yeah. Definitely. There's loads of videos, isn't there, on YouTube and TikTok and all these things online now, which is amazing. But I'm glad that you found that. It's a lovely thing. It's quite meditative. I think for anyone that finds meditation hard, it's an incredible way of getting out of your head and getting out of yourself and kind of, yeah, just being at peace doing something else.
yeah, I've been using it as part of my tea routines the past couple of weeks. So whenever I'm having my tea, just for 5 minutes or whatever, I'll just have a little painting session, and yeah, it's really restorative. So something I'm going to keep up this summer, just for
Yes.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the moment, I think I've read that you are sort of between exhibitions and you're consciously taking a pause so that you've got time to experiment and play and take some risks. And I love that idea of building an intentional pause into your life. Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think particularly last year I got swept up in finishing the masters and doing the exhibition for that. But then also very soon after that, I did an exhibition with the Cyrenians in Edinburgh, which was amazing. But it was only a couple of months after, and then I had a solo exhibition at the Dundas Street Gallery as well. And I think by the end of last year, I just felt a bit like I'd burned myself out and that I wasn't kind of enjoying the creative process anymore. So I think that is the point where you really need to return to playing, and your practice is always evolving as an artist. And I think if you don't allow yourself those periods of peace to sort of think about what you want to do next and allow yourself time to play, it all just becomes quite monotonous, and you just feel like you're in a bit of a treadmill and you're not really enjoying the experience. So I'm lucky that I can do that, that I can take a bit of time out. I have another business which supports me financially, so I'm able to do that. But it has been really important. I think you just don't move on in anything unless you allow yourself periods of time to reflect and think about where you've been and what you want to do differently. So I think that's critical in anything that you do. But yeah, it has been amazing. I only now, after doing that for a month or two, feel like I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm doing something that I'm enjoying again. So yeah, it's taken quite a while, but it's been amazing.
So it sounds like you've learned to listen to yourself and to gift yourself that time and
Yeah,
sort of listening really to what you need. What other sort of lessons has the past 20 years or so, sort of having a business and returning to art, taught you?
I think just that doing less is really when things start to kind of come together, when you allow yourself time to reflect on what you've done, and what you need to do differently. It's so critical, to anything in life. I think it's a really easy thing to get caught up in, being a workaholic. Essentially, that's definitely what I was in the early days. And it's so important to kind of notice what's going on around you and live your life as well as doing what you want to be doing. So yeah, I think walking outside and allowing myself time to do that has been really critical. And just knowing when I don't feel like I'm in the right frame of mind, I think that's another thing, that when you're caught up in working so hard all the time, you just don't feel great all the time. And you kind of take that as a sort of normal way of feeling. And it's not until you allow yourself a bit of space to really sit in quite a lot of discomfort sometimes and think about what it is that you need to change. You need to allow yourself time to be able to do that, to make the right choice and to properly listen to what's going to be the best thing to do next. So, yeah, I think definitely allowing yourself time to do that and not being caught up continuously in the expectations of everything else. It's a really difficult thing to do a lot of the time, but I think, like I did this morning, woke up not feeling great. Normally, I would have just run out the door and ploughed myself into doing something and forgotten about it. Whereas just taking a little bit of time to reflect and do a bit of yoga or something, light a candle and have a cup of tea, has made me feel like a different person. And I know that that won't be the same for everyone, especially if you're going through really huge, difficult things. But yeah, I think just being kind to yourself, is a really important thing.
Yeah, and just really pausing to listen to yourself and trusting that you know what you need, which is, yeah, much easier said than done, but
Yeah,
vital. And I think it's something we end up, I don't know whether we have to, but we end up having to sort of practice more as we get older as well.
yeah, definitely. I think going through this period of life, you realize how critical that is, for sure. Yeah. Being a woman going through perimenopause and things, I don't know how people in kind of really high powered full time jobs cope with it, because, yeah, my brain's been all over the place. So it's really important more now than ever, I think, to just give yourself a bit of space and time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think we learn really valuable lessons as well, almost when we're forced to sort of take a little pause and step back and reflect a little bit more rather than just ploughing on, ploughing on. I think there's a lot of valuable lessons there as well.
Definitely.
So, cheesy question, but I'm curious what success means to you in this period of your life.
Wow, that's a really difficult thing. I think it's probably finding a sense of peace in yourself, because that's something that I have not had for a lot of my life, I think. And it just feels like something that's been really important recently, finding a sense of space um, and peace. I think potentially, talking about ADHD and things earlier, I've always felt like I just want to do things and be on the go all the time. And I don't think I've ever really known what I needed until I gave myself that space. Um, so right now, in the past I would have found that quite boring, but right now just having a bit more of a routine and a bit of space in my day is what I would consider successful.
Yeah, I love that space and to be able to find a sense of peace. Lovely. So I'm excited to see what you do in the future, both with Edinburgh Larder and with your art. Do you have any big plans, or is it all open to see what unfolds?
At the moment, it is. Yeah, we took on the Morningside unit in the Larder just a couple of years ago, so that's still kind of finding its feet. They're doing an amazing job up there, but yeah, that's still quite new. So letting that kind of find its feet will be a lovely thing. And in terms of exhibitions, I'm doing Dunbar Art Route in October, which was amazing last year. So I'm really looking forward to that. But definitely allowing myself to play around and find new techniques. I'm doing a few kind of online courses and things at the moment, which I'm really enjoying. Um, so yeah, seeing what unfolds.
And just before we sort of draw everything to a close, I hear that sort of walking outside in nature is really key to you. What other sort of things do you do on a weekly or daily basis to help you cultivate that sense of peace and bring you back to yourself?
I try and do a little bit of journaling in the morning and at night. I've got a kind of mindfulness journal that I follow that just asks what you want to do through the day to bring yourself some joy and to do something for your body and your mind, and then just reflect a little bit very briefly at night on what's been good on the day, and how to make tomorrow better. So I think that that's a good thing. And yeah, just having a cup of tea and lighting a candle, doing some yoga is always makes me feel better. I find it hard to find time to do that, but whenever I do it, I always feel much better. So yeah, I think those are the things that I find helpful.
So, if there's one thing that you can recommend then for people to take forward with them this week as they're sitting with their cup of tea, whatever type of tea that might be, is there one thing that you would recommend? And they can put it in a flask and get outside as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I would recommend. Allow
Mm,
yourself some time to just go for a walk and notice some things. Maybe take a few photographs and just see what it is that kind of jumps out to you and what's important to you. But just allow yourself time to kind of get out into nature and yeah, reflect.
yeah, it's so, so powerful. And I'm really inspired by the life that you've managed to create, both having a business and keeping it running while also returning to the need to paint and be really almost embodied within the natural landscape all around us. And I think it's really clear how much it all ties together, the pull of the natural world and how you've sort of interwoven that within your life, and just the peace that it gives you as well on a daily basis is really, really inspiring. And there's also a real sense of bringing people together, that connectedness, whether it's over food in the Edinburgh Larder or through your exhibitions and bringing people together through that, and all the people that you touch all over the world with your art. So yeah, it's really inspiring. And yes, I think people will have got a lot of inspiration from this too, whether it's picking up a paintbrush or trying a recipe that they've never tried before, just returning to that craft. And I think that gives us a lot of hope for the future with everything that's happening in the world and all the negativity. I think at the end of the day, when we come together as human beings and really do what only we can do, I think there's a lot of power there, and that can bring us all a real sense of peace. So yeah, I am certainly going to switch off after this, brew a cup of tea, and I'm going to walk down to the sea and maybe take some pictures and leave my phone behind and just notice what I notice. So whatever tea routine people pick this week, just take a little more, hit pause and create a little bit more space and see what comes up. So thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and look forward to seeing a lot more of you in Dunbar.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. If something in this episode stayed with you, don't try and change everything at once. Just start with a moment. Make the tea, let it steep. Take a breath and notice what is actually there. And from there, choose what matters next. Because clarity isn't something that we find, it's something that we make space for. This is the Tea Mind. Until next time, take care of your attention.